Test 1 2, test 1 2.
I'm just going to ask all those who are standing outside at the foyer, if you can hear me, if you could please kindly make your way inside the ICT theater. And to our guests this morning, we warmly welcome you. This morning's collaborators are the University of the South Pacific in collaboration with the Pacific Islands Forum Secretariat, ICT for Women Digital Alliance, and Fiji Fashion Week, who put together a morning tea on Pink October, not only to sell pink ribbons, but to generally raise awareness. And raise awareness in terms of how cancer is a prevalent issue in the region, hardly talked about, and also to see how ICT can be leveraged to promote health issues. So with that, I'm just going to ask Irish if we could pull up the projector. So just before we start, I'd just like to ask a very quick question. Are there any survivors in the room? Any survivors? Any type of cancer? One? Awesome. If you don't mind me asking, what kind of cancer was it? Breast cancer, awesome. And so you're with the DMC's office? You're from Fiji Cancer Society, awesome. So we'd also really like to acknowledge the survivors who are here in the room. I'm going to ask a second question. Are there any of you who have lost or who currently have a loved one who's battling cancer right now? If you could please raise your hand. Let's say currently battling cancer. One. Anyone else? Okay, let me ask the second question. Are there any of you who have who've lost loved ones? That can be, yes, your relatives to cancer. Oh, there's a lot more. So you know how cancer can affect families, affect communities on a very real level. It can be very traumatic and at the same time challenging, and at the same time you can see how communities can be resilient. And so I'm just gonna, without further ado, I'm just gonna ask those who are still making their way in to please fill up the middle row, fill up the middle seats, just so that when people are speaking, they can have better eye contact. And Irish, I'm just gonna ask Irish, are we good to go with the sound? Yeah, dancers are still getting ready. So whilst we're waiting for our dancers to get ready, I'm just going to call Irish from the DMC's office to briefly welcome everybody officially into the ICT theater this morning. Irish is one of the faces of the university.
Good morning, colleagues and friends within the university, and for those who are coming and making time from outside the university. On behalf of USP and our partnering colleagues from PIFS, Physical Society, and other organizations who are part of this noble initiative, let me very warmly welcome you to the University of South Pacific. And this initiative serves to reflect that USP and other partners, other corporate agencies and other partners are not only collaborating in terms of research, in terms of academic area and other things, but also very heavily and very actively involved in raising awareness on sensitive issues such as cancer. As my colleague has alluded to earlier, these are real issues. These are very real issues that are facing our society, and together the least we can do is to raise awareness and to be there for each other. And in those very few words, I warmly welcome you, and I hope that our colleagues will be slowly dropping in as we are less in numbers. But I really look forward to the program for today, and welcome you again. Thank you very much.
So first up, we're very pleased to present the Oceania Arts Center. They will be presenting a performance today.
Birds flying high, you know how I feel. Sun in the sky, you know how I feel. Breeze drifting on by, you know how I feel. It's a new dawn, it's a new day, it's a new life for me. You know how I feel, and I'm feeling sun in the sky. Good. You know I'm feeling good. You know, fish in the sea, you know how I feel. It's a new day, river running free, you know how I feel. Blossom on a tree, you know how I feel. It's a new dawn, it's a new day, it's a new life for me. I'm feeling good. Dragonfly out in the sun, you know what I mean, don't you know? Butterflies all having fun, you know what I mean. Sleep in peace when day is done, that's what I mean. And this whole world is a new world and a bold world for me. For me. Fly out in the sun, you know butterflies all having fun, you know what I stars when you shine, you know how I feel. Scent of the pine, you know how I feel. Oh, freedom is mine, and I know how I feel. It's a new dawn, it's a new day, it's a new life. It's a new dawn, it's a new day, it's a new life. It's a new dawn, it's a new day, it's a new life, it's a new life for me. And I'm feeling the scent of the pine, you know how I feel. Oh, freedom is mine, and I know how I feel. It's a new dawn, it's a new day, it's a new life. It's a new dawn, I feel it's a new life. It's a new dawn, it's a new day, it's a new life, it's a new life for me. And I'm feeling like, you know how I feel. Birds flying high, you know how I feel. It's a new dawn, it's a new day, sun in the sky.
The Oceania Center.
You know how I feel. Some new life.
If I could just ask Irish to drop the projector down so we can all see this morning's program. But before we do that, I'm just going to ask one of the staff from ITS, one of the members of our social club,
Birds flying high.
to come and say a prayer for those who are battling cancer.
Sun in the sky.
The Oceania Center.
You know how I feel. Some new life.
Just for your information, everything that's happening this morning is being streamed, video streamed. The link has been shared to all our partners. The link has been shared to all our partners. Before we do that, I'm just going to ask one of the staff from ITS, one of the members of our social club,
Birds flying high.
to come and say a prayer for those who are battling cancer.
Sun in.
Apologies, as you can see, we also have tech hurdles from time to time. So you can see that we're being streamed live, the content this morning. So even after the event, it'll still be available. And the Twitter hashtags are available for those of you who are on Twitter. So SPC, PIFs, USP, feel free to go ahead and tweet. And but before that, if we can have somebody from ITS. And feel free to pray in Fijian.
So I'm just gonna pray now, my mother tongue Fijian. Mosmanda, let's pray. Coba na tamiki mami bolong malangi ki mami dampe na matagap dengan sini kuah. Mami tambor na mami bawa di binaka. Mami lebeti kemuni na kaluli na kalusa na muni tu na lewa mami malangi daki. Buru-buru era. Kini beti buru-buru kemuni kini sa kaluni vi kaluni tu ni vi tui. Ni turang ni vi turang aketengah. Kalau sa tinggal bikin muni na kaketengah, sa dapat talang bikin muni kaketengah. Kalau sa waktu kaya meda muni ko coba cair, kalau sa ando bi baru taki coba sama. Kalau ni biasa na ketengah, Emmanuel ni kalau sa tiu bati kimami. Maminta mena baru roko, taga mena ni sini kuah, betam boros kena baru bina bikin muni na kalau ni bukan bulu siluali. Misli bikin mami, rani kimian rambulan na matakan ni kuah, sul tali ding ni bula. Mami lagu buru-buru mai turang na matakan ni kuah. Lagu durum mainan dende, lagu durum na kuatalaka, wika sokim lagu duruma, ya tumbulu mai bunan nakadaka, mami sota na tagani kuan ndoni naki, mami sa tamboro kana pobri binaka. Mami torno ngon ko turang kami tambor na naki, kami tambi kira na mataka bunani kuah. Tumbulu turang ara tara itu na mai tengo na kensa. Mami kila na koloni, wai ta kota banganan ra. Ndobu kuna bunduai, karang gara bikin na mai tengo. Ikim sani te kemi na kolo ni kila kemen babnak, sama sulak na mati lebu taratu nan ron bumi mulos nuzar bima tanggali mati waktu kai tuna kiansa ni sui na kansa ni yango se tingni yang da turangai tarayana kiansa na tino budango kim satam boro wikim ni so banga turanga raso ta kai tuna dende so bangara tuni labu ngongo merle ngara bikin ko binwai sen ragi ni bulor la duruma kim satam boro ron bulo wikim ni mata ka binanga ni sini kuah nyalo binanga kolo ni gai takos na mata ni kuah ni bibuke ni bitarai merkila na kolo kimani yang sarna bunyuai kimani pada pasar ni naik kertu kini matangani kuah kimani ni bolak na boleh na kolo ni na takos cun matangani kuah ni na taka do kina numbula tiku lenga loma lenga lenga taka cun na mati lenga taka cun yang garebo bunyuai siapa pun nandagi numbula takos kini matangani kuah misa kalau di ni kolo ni kini santu tikir na boleh punya naik kim santam bikin matangani kuah dombulan dosar dan tempera cun matangani kuah bertuna komitir to garabana kena dita bagi na sanga ngo kim sabang ni na klo ni na takos kini no buke na kini naki Pai tolu kine nalmamu. Bina boleh unuman benaka. Iba rota kana mutanga ni kuwa. Mami duba na masu. Mkiri chonde beka ke ngo senga tala ni adatani. Na ada ngai sul mil malang mi ro kinambula. Na ada ningkanga. Na ada muninga chisu ni mami turanga kai bambula. Amen.
Naka. You'll notice that we modified the program a little bit. We had the performance first, and we're just going to do one slight modification before Dr. James comes up. But I'm going to ask Dr. James to please make his way to the front, just so it's easier. Yes, and I'm going to ask Fiji Cancer Society, their representative, is it Belinda? Yes, to please come up and share a few words. And then I'm going to ask Dr. James. And straight after Belinda, I'm going to ask one of our survivors to come and speak, to speak about her experience battling cancer before we go into the technical aspects and the policy aspects, just so that we can put a human face to the beast. So with that, Belinda.
Good morning, all. I was quite taken by surprise. But anyway, I'd like to thank the USP Forum Secretariat, PG Fashion Week, and the ICT for Women Digital Alliance for the collaboration for today. With the society, moving forward into the new year, we would like to take out our awareness and advocacy programs out into the communities, be more effective, and not only limited to Suva or Viti Levu as a whole, but take it out to Vanua Levu and the maritime areas. Funds raised from Pinktober assist our patients through, we provide transportation for those who are financially challenged. We basically just ensuring that they're able to go to the hospital and get the treatment on time. And the other funds will assist us with our advocacy, awareness, and hopefully screening programs, which we'd like to roll out in the new year. But thank you so much for your support today, and I wish you all a blessed day. Thank you.
Thank you, Belinda. So that's how your funds are going to be used. So we'd like to really thank all of you, the different organizations and the different departments that have been busy selling packets of 20 ribbons throughout the week. And Belinda's just described how your funds are going to be utilized by the Cancer Society. So I'm going to ask our survivor, our only survivor in the room, who's present here, to share a few words about her experiences. And while she's speaking, I'm going to ask Dr. James Fong, who's the head of department OB-GYN in CWM, who's also an executive member of the Cancer Society. And I'm going to ask Mr. Joel Nilon, who's the Pacific Regionalism Advisor from the Pacific Islands Forum Secretariat, if they could make their way up, please, and sit on those chairs. I'm just going to...
Thank you. Morning. My name is Marianne, and I've been a survivor for 11 years now. I first detected a lump in 2000, but I was booked for surgery, but I didn't follow that up. So back in 2003, I had it taken out, and yes, so the doctor told me to come 2 weeks later for the mastectomy, which is the removal of my breast. So I had that done in 2004, and I'm still here today. And my journey is not a very good or bad, but I sailed through my chemo, which was the full 6 cycles, and I was glad that I didn't have my year 4, but just the nausea that I experienced, and But I've been talking from the 1st of October, so I'm just urging everyone, men and women, to get yourselves checked. Just take yourselves to the doctors and get checked. Men also too can get breast cancer. So yesterday I was talking at FNU and all the doctors were listening. So, but I just ask all of you to get yourselves checked. And you wake up, you don't sleep on it, you fight it. Thank you.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. Please give her a big round of applause. Now, just before our speakers come up to speak, we'd just like to raise the objective of this morning tea. And they're there on the projector for you, on the screen. So the first one is, you can all read it, to raise awareness about cancer, including but not limited to cervical cancer, breast cancer, prostate cancer, and the works. But as you know, Pinktober is usually targeting breast cancer, but we've decided to expand it further and talk about some of the less talked about cancers, like cervical cancer and prostate cancer, for instance. And also to highlight the forum leaders' decision on cervical cancer as a regional public policy issue, and also to raise awareness of how ICT can be leveraged to promote health issues in terms of, and so if you have a Twitter account, you can tweet, or if you're streaming in right now, you can also tweet hashtag Pinktober 2015. So these are some of the hashtags that you can use as well: ICT for health, ICT for women's health. So those are the Twitter hashtags, and you can follow @ForumSec and @Uni South Pacific. So without further ado, I would like to acknowledge the presence of Dr. James Fong. He's done a lot for the Fiji Cancer Society, and he's the head of department for OB-GYN in CWM. And in fact, we're really looking forward to have him address us this morning. So Dr. James, welcome.
Sorry. Thank you for your kind words. EUSP ICT Center, the PIFs, all our colleagues from the Fiji Cancer Society, survivors of cancer, ladies and gentlemen. You see I'm wearing blue today because I just went in over the weekend. I had to go and bury my uncle with my dad's elder brother. He had prostate cancer, and just prior to that, his daughter had breast cancer, which we were able to do something about. So, coming to talk over here, and the month is fairly timely for me in the sense that it's quite thematic within my family also. Now, I've been asked to come and say a few things about cancer in general, with some concentration on breast and cervical cancer. And I just wanted to highlight how the issue is quite relevant to Fiji in the sense that our major burden of disease at the moment is in the non-communicable diseases. And the first two is the diabetes and cardiovascular diseases. And the thing is that with the Ministry of Health, we've had quite a few programs for the first two, which is the cardiovascular and the diabetes, where there is a wellness program running, and there's a fair amount of awareness being created around these two. And in fact, these two have had a big impact. These two diseases have had there's been some impact on them in terms of how they are being controlled. The one area that's going to create a problem for us in the future will still remain the cancers. In actual fact, cancer at the moment is responsible for about 11% of all the deaths in Fiji. And the sizable burden it produces is quite evident because we do not have the resources to deal with it. At this point in time, something like only less than 5% of our cancers are given some money to go overseas for treatment. less than 5%, but less than 5% takes up almost 40% of our overseas treatment budget. So it has been, so it's quite a remarkable burden for a country like Fiji to have to deal with cancers in a holistic way. I think the other telling factor about cancers in Fiji is that the two biggest causes are cervical and breast cancer. And on our registry, in fact, cervical and breast cancer make up 66% of all the cancer entries in our registry. And I think the tragedy is that these are the two cancers that actually have prevention strategies more well-defined than any other cancer. Science has told us what to do. The problem is resourcing and implementing the actions that are required to be done. And so Pink October, likewise Movember, and all these awareness creation exercises are a very worthy exercise for many of us who work in this area. Because resourcing the required strategies to deal with prevention and treatment of cancers is very short in Fiji. We have just now the Ministry of Health has just started putting together a plan to combat cancer. In actual fact, at this very moment, there's a few of us in the National Oncology Committee who are running focus group discussions to try and look at, to scope out the shape of how cancer services in Fiji needs to look like. And we have had to start right from that beginning, because our problem at the moment is that most of our strategies for cancer have been activities. And trying to pull them together into a program, we haven't had that kind of document that will actually build it up into a program. But even in these early stages, it is fairly obvious that many people want many treatments. Everybody wants a radiotherapy center. Everybody wants big MRI machines, CT scan, and all that. Yet, it is also obvious to us in the Ministry of Health that if we were to build radiotherapy centers, CT scans, and get all this big stuff in, to a large extent, they will be white elephants. Because nobody comes, most people do not come in time. We just don't have the culture where people actually present early enough to be screened. And even if they do present early enough to be screened, the outpatients department is way too big for people to spend time to actually see them carefully so that they can be screened. So, I guess what I'm getting at is that the Ministry of Health is trying to pull together a plan that will allow us to deal with cancer in a comprehensive manner. But in order for us to get the big technologies in, we still need the small things on the ground to work. We need an ability, we need an awareness program that gets people to present early. When people are when people have been tested as positive, we need a tracking program that will allow us to make that person go from the screening all the way to the treatment. And finally, we need to make sure that all those who are not treatable have good access to palliative care. And all these require a system, a network that is operational. In the first weekend of November, there's a lady coming in from, I don't know whether you know, but Peter MacCallum Hospital in Australia is one of the big cancer hospitals in the Pacific. And they're coming out to help us scope out palliative care services. Likewise, we got people from the International Union for Cancer Control who are coming in early January to come and help us put together a plan for palliative services. And our current focus really for the Oncology Committee is trying to get those structures on the ground that helps us get patients to the technology when they need it, and make sure that when they need it, they continue to come to us so that we can complete the investment that is being made in screening them. At this point in time, for cervical cancer, we do a screening program that only covers 10% of people who are supposed to be screened. In the age group that's supposed to be screened, only 10% is screened. And in that 10%, the high-grade lesions that we screen out, the ones that are positive, the high-grade lesions, only 50% of them actually will get a biopsy and get a confirmation of the diagnosis. The other 50% will just languish in the system and we have no. So I guess for us, what we're saying is that if we invest in screening, even if the government invests in screening, we will not get the dividends because the people will not complete the whole exercise. You can only get benefit if you screen and you treat. And where there's a link between screening and treatment, then we get benefit. But at the moment, we are spending a lot on screening, no benefits because the people who get screened don't get treated, or not enough of them. So I've tried to pull together a small view of the problems that we have in relation to cancer. Not only do people present late, we have people who present but do not complete the treatment. We've got, we order drugs begin to expire because the people who are taking it have just stopped coming. And so there's a whole host of things that needs to be done in order to make building up cancer services a lot more profitable for the people. And I think the first thing that needs to be done is this issue of giving hope. And this is what this awareness program will probably need to be focused on a lot. We need more survivors to talk. We need people who have survived it to come and say, hey, hang on, not all of us went. Some of us are still around. So that people realize that it is actually worthwhile to present early. It is worthwhile to, when you reach the age of 50, to go and get your prostate checked. There is some benefit that you're going to get out of it. And it's quite unfortunate, but some of the focus group discussions we've been having, it's quite obvious that especially those with the lower socioeconomic strata don't see cancer as something that's curable. And in fact, when I do the screening program, when we run our screening program, one of the reasons that women don't come for a screening program, see, we do a screening program for Pap smear. Now, Pap smear is supposed to pick up a disease that can happen, not a disease that's happened. But many women will not come up for the Pap smear because they're thinking that once it's positive, it's happened. And that makes it worse. Once we screen them as positive, many of them actually don't come back because they think that they got it. So there's no point coming back. So the message of hope is something that I think we need to focus on. And this message of hope is urgently required because the big technology stuff are being rushed into the ministry. We are at the moment in the course of trying to look at setting up radiotherapy services. We've got MRI services already in existence. We've got CT scan services already in existence. But all that will come to naught if we do not get the message of hope out to the people there so that they can start presenting early. All those big technology stuff will become white elephants if we are not too careful. I know that we have a number of education centers. The Fiji School of Medicine have produced a number of doctors who have specialized in surgery and gynecology. And there's a number of us who are also out on training to specialize further on cancers. The last person we sent is currently in Christchurch now to do a training in cancer treatment. But we're also a little bit worried because we sent her out for treatment when we haven't got a cancer unit. So while she's on, we sent her out for training, but we haven't got a cancer unit. So while she's on training, some of us around the place are building up a cancer unit, getting a group of nurses together to form what is called the Nursing Oncology Unit. And we are hoping that this Nursing Oncology Unit can be supported by many of you in this forum to build up these things that I spoke about, creation of awareness, tracking of patients, and making sure that those who are screen positive actually come for treatment. Colleagues, if you give me the chance, I can actually keep talking about this cancer thing. But I really, it can get quite technical. I think that I just want to say that my only message for today is that there is stuff being done out there, and there are many people who are quite happy to lend their support. I mean, when we started talking about radiation therapy, we were quite amazed at the amount of support that we were getting from Australia, New Zealand, as far as Sweden, Norway, where we had experts coming in and saying, yes, we can do this, we can do that, and we got a flood of emails stating how they can help us. But the reality is that unless we get down to the basics and we create the right awareness and we make sure that people actually can come for screening, a lot of these big things will exist as white elephants in due course. I guess when I'm talking about how we need to give that message of hope to cancer, I am reminded also that in my personal experience with my cousin and my uncle, both of them went through a hard battle. One actually came out on the other side cured. The other one went through a palliative care process, which in the end, although it was difficult, it did empower most of my family members to all go and get their prostate checked, all get their cervical pap smear screening done, and all of them went for the breast check. Now, I was just thinking about it and I said, man, it should not take something like that to make people move for screening. And I think the duty is upon us here that we try and make sure that we get people for screening. Even people don't go for screening just because of a tragic need. We need to be going for screening because we want to be well, we want to be fit, we want to look after children, we want to be able to contribute to generations to come. So, with those few words, I have tried not to be too technical. I've just tried to demonstrate that there is a lot that is being done. We need more on the ground, and the message that we need to put into cancer is hope. We badly need hope in the message of cancer so that we could make sure that more people can get, access services when they become available. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. James. And from that, we gathered that cancer kills 11% of people in Fiji every year. And of the 10%, and of the people that are supposed to really get screened for cervical cancer, the statistics he shared with us are that it's reaching only 10% of the intended target group. And of that 10%, only 50% take it a step further and go for biopsies. So that's a serious underreached target group. There's a shortfall of 90%, so that's really, really serious. So just before we call our next speaker, who will be speaking on from a regionalism perspective, Mr. Joel Nilon, I'm going to ask Solo to come and read a poem, and then we'll have Mr. Nilon, and then we'll go into a time of discussion. And there's another person who's supposed to present a poem, Elzima. Is she in? From Campus Life?
Morning. This poem was written by Misala Tomani herself, and I have the honor of reading this poem to you this morning. It's called Gone But Never Forgotten. Like a tear-stained jewel caught in the sands of time are the memories of a well-lived, robust life. You were here for a brief moment and then gone the next. I watched you battle cancer, the dreaded beast. Even in your last epic battle, how you continued to find the courage to fight the oppressed, the weak, and the poor was a testament of your strength. Yours was a life filled with grace, courage, compassion, and conviction. Now, as you rest in eternal peace, where your spirit is dancing in some distant meadow full of daffodils, with birds singing a sweet lullaby, your legacy lives on in the lives of those you touched. You may be gone, but never forgotten. I pray that they find the sword to slay the beast. Dedicated to Nani Siravula, beloved mother, Anna Grace Naingulevu, best friend, and Sir Peter Eldridge Williams, Queen's Counsel, beloved mentor and friend. Vinaka.
I'd like to ask Mr. Joel Nilon from the Pacific Islands Forum Secretariat.
Thank you very much, and thank you to the organisers and to the University of the South Pacific for inviting the Forum Secretariat here today. I'm here on behalf of the Secretary General, who is Secretary General Dame Meg Taylor, who's unable to be here. But basically, we're conducting some work to address cervical cancer. It was very good to hear some of the insights from Dr. Fong about resource challenges here in Fiji. The work we're doing at the Forum Secretariat on behalf of the Pacific Islands Forum leaders aims to address cervical cancer at a regional level. And some of the issues around political will, around resourcing behind the issue are instructive for us because from the issues that we see in other countries, we are the same. I'm very low in the chain, and I'm certainly no health expert, so I'm just delivering a message in some ways. But I am involved in the framework for Pacific regionalism, and it's through that framework that this issue of cervical cancer was put on the table for forum leaders to consider this year. Basically, we received through the framework for Pacific regionalism, I'll talk about that more in a second, a submission from Family Planning New South Wales, an NGO based in Australia, which seeks to look at cervical cancer screening, policy and program throughout the Pacific. Now this program aims to look at cervical cancer prevention through the development of a regional policy that aims to roll out a program of screening and vaccination for cervical cancer. Very quick background, the framework for Pacific regionalism is it's a public policy process whereby members of the public can submit issues for forum leaders to consider. So Family Planning New South Wales put forward this issue. It went through a screening process of its own, and it was one of the issues that leaders considered this year. Now, according to this submission that we received, we know that cervical cancer places a huge burden in the Pacific region. And in the Melanesian countries, cervical cancer has one of the highest incidence rates in the world. And we heard some of those statistics from Dr. Fong in the case of Fiji. But we do know that early screening can save women's lives, but we do know that such screening is not routinely available here in Fiji, let alone right across the Pacific. What we do know is that where there has been screening, where there have been pap smear tests, these have been done at an ad hoc level. They haven't been systematic approaches to conducting such screening, and we're getting the sorts of results that we've just heard about. And as a result of that, we're seeing that women across the Pacific are dying up to 9 times the rate of women in Australia. In Australia, the rate is 1.8 per 100,000 women. In Fiji, it's 17.9 per 100,000 women. In Papua New Guinea, 23.3 per 100,000. In Solomon Islands, 10.9. In Vanuatu, 9.7. So clearly concerning statistics. We're in the very early stages of developing the policy response. We've been given the mandate by leaders to continue this research, but part of that work is to strategise around what a regional approach might look like. According to the submission from Family Planning New South Wales, their belief is that, firstly, and as I've just mentioned, clearly support from political leaders is required, and in front of that, clear resourcing for programs to address cervical cancer. But a regional approach to addressing cervical cancer could also be based on learnings from successful programs. And I know Dr. Fong has outlined some of the shortcomings, but as we understand across the Pacific, Fiji has one of the more successful or more coordinated and targeted screening programs. What can we do to apply those lessons here in Fiji to other parts of the Pacific? And working together as a region to address this issue, one clear way may be the bulk purchasing of medicines or screening equipment or whatever it is, which reduces the costs and makes these things more affordable. So what would a regional approach to addressing cervical cancer focus on? Again, the submission highlights a number of things. Firstly, capacity building of local health workers. Also, a strengthening of research, evaluation and monitoring. A joint approach to HPV vaccination. Certainly a formalising of screening and treatment pathways, as well as procedures and referrals in national health policies. And also increased community awareness and understanding of the importance of early screening, early treatment, and also vaccination. Those are the issues and the proposed regional response, and in the discussion it'd be good to hear from the audience some other views on what a robust regional policy response might be. How did this issue land on the leaders' agenda this year, and how is it that they've come to identify it as one of their key policy priorities? Well, in terms of the forum process, I mentioned that Family Planning New South Wales had made the submission. The Specialist Subcommittee on Regionalism, which is a forum body, it sat down and selected amongst a range of public submissions this issue of cervical cancer. And its rationale for doing so was based on 3 key issues. Firstly, the Specialist Subcommittee believed that it was important to promote an issue at the regional level that contributed to positive outcomes for women and girls. Secondly, they identified that with sufficient political will and resourcing, cervical cancer is an issue that can be addressed. It's entirely preventable, treatable. It just hasn't had the resourcing or attention that it requires. Thirdly, they see the positive contributions to girls and women as also having flow-on effects to both the informal and formal economies, given that women and girls are contributors to both. So with all those discussions, they elected to put cervical cancer and its treatment on the agenda for leaders to consider. Now, the leaders considered what the specialist subcommittee had put forward to them. And in the forum communique is captured the response that they've had. Firstly, they note the substantial burden that cervical cancer places on women and girls in the Pacific, as well as the insufficient response to address it across the region. But they agreed, given the current prioritisation of NCDs, that developing a regional approach to cervical cancer requires further consultation with technical organisations and national authorities, as well as a consideration of resource allocation for prevention and treatment. During the forum leaders meeting, a number of partners indicated potential support for prevention of cervical cancer. These partners include Cuba, China, and South Korea. Secretary-General is also keen to leverage potential funding from global philanthropic organisations. And I think from her years in New York and Washington, she has plenty of formal and informal contacts that she's keen to take up and see what sort of funding support can be put behind this issue. So given what the leaders have presented to us in terms of a response, basically what we in the Forum Secretariat will have to do is work very closely with partners across the region who are already working in the health sector. We will also have to work with Family Planning New South Wales, with organisations such as SPC, the WHO, and with national health agencies as well, to continue our research, to find out more about the prevalence of cervical cancer, to understand some of the issues behind people not wanting to present or to come forward for screening. We also do some follow-up research on the economic and social burden of cervical cancer as well. We understand too that communication and advocacy will be important in keeping the political and community momentum behind this issue. So we'll have to do all that work, put together some options for some policy options for the leaders based on this information about procurement of vaccines, of screening, of rates of prevalence and such. Put this back to the forum leaders at their meeting next year, and then seek a follow-up response from them as to what the next step is. But just during our discussion, given the expertise in this room, we just want to pose a couple of questions. Firstly, and we've talked, Dr. Fong has already, I think, considered this, but what are the obstacles that prevent women from being screened? That's the first question. And second, are there any other additional recommendations for what a regional approach to addressing cervical cancer should look at? From our perspective, I think in the Forum Secretariat, and for those of us who are advocates for this issue, I think it should be noticed that it's now on the agenda. There's a will, I think, to address it, although the immediate request is for more research to be done. I think cancer societies across the Pacific, perhaps there's a platform for additional action and for additional advocacy now that it's on the agenda. And whatever support that the Forum Secretariat can offer, I think it's an open offer, and I think I think it's a good time for us to consolidate our efforts and not let this this opportunity, now that it is on the agenda, to pass. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nilon and Dr. James. We're going to go into a robust time of discussion. It won't be a long one. We'll try and keep it focused. I'm going to ask one of the interns to please bring another chair. This time I'd like to invite Donny De Freitas from, okay, he's not available. Is there anyone else from the crop working group on ICT who's present in the room? Apart from me and Donny? No one. Okay. So I'll be part of the discussion. I'll be part of the panel. But what we would like to do is to hear from the audience, but to have both Mr. Nilon and Dr. James, if I could just ask you, if I could just bring your chair. Hopefully you can see your faces. Yes. So we've heard a lot of statistics being tossed around. We've heard a lot of statistics being tossed around. In fact, we're very, very fortunate to have a very high-level operational, technical content presented to us by Dr. James this morning. Like, it's not something that you'd readily read about in current publications. So it's very, very cutting edge, very raw. And at the same time, we're very privileged to have the regionalism advisor from the Pacific Islands Forum Secretariat update us as a community on how the leaders are thinking, and that it's been endorsed as something that the region should focus on. So now we'd like to open the floor for discussion. Is there anyone who'd like to pose a question to any of the speakers, or your thoughts, or would you like to share your thoughts? I'd like to start off. Personally, as being from the University of the South Pacific, the University of the South Pacific also happens to wear the hat of crop chair of a working group on ICT. And ICT for development is generally an area where the region as a whole, as you know, we've been working to see how ICT can be leveraged for development. And more specific focus today, we could hear even from both the presentations how there's room to use ICT to leverage content. I also acknowledge Miss Yi, who's here from the library. She's the head of USP Library. As you can imagine, USP Library Services, there's a lot of research portals and data portals that are housed even within the USP net on diverse content. So I'm not sure, Joan, whether there's anything specifically on health. Do we have a health research portal, do you know? Okay. So we heard about how, especially when Dr. James was sharing, he said that of the of the targeted group that should be going through screening, only 10% are reached. So that 90% that are unreached, and if our current stats are showing that, what was it, 11% or 14% that have been killed by cancer? Yes, so, right. Cancer is responsible for 11% of deaths in Fiji. And he mentioned that the high targeted cancer areas, according to stats, were breast and cervical. And so and he also further mentioned that of the targeted group, only 10% were being screened. And of the 10% that were screened, only 50% go for further biopsies. We have a serious outreach problem in that area. So there's a massive gap there. So yes, Joan, you were going to say?
Thanks. Yeah, I was just going to say that although we don't focus on health information because it's not one of the subjects that is taught here at USP, we do have quite a lot of materials, in the area. So anyone wanting information, even if we don't have it, we will get it for them. Thank you.
Thank you, Joan. And SPC's media officer was here as well. He read the poem. So SPC has massive health portals on their network. Massive health, and that's their mandate. They're mandated to do that. But what I'm sort of talking about in terms of leveraging ICT as a tool for outreach and development, from what you were saying, sir, Dr. Fong, was things like the use of mobile applications, or even things like social media applications, where you can take content and roll it out in a pervasive way, like involving the communities. So that's one way where we at the ICT Center, and where we as a community, also as the crop working group, can broker the necessary connections to help come alongside you to raise awareness on these sorts of issues, apart from hosting morning teas. So does anyone have, thank you, Jackie? Jackie from Fiji Fashion Week? There's a mic there. There's a mic.
Hello, I'm Jackie from Fiji Fashion Week. Dr. Fong, one of the things that I noted is that you said we need a tracking policy for patients who have been, screened, they may be at risk, and they just disappear. Do you think, it seems to me from what you were saying that would be vitally important. Do you think that we need to put some type of a tracking system in? And could ICT, USP, whoever help to put that in so that the women who are at risk can be followed up? They don't need to have to come back themselves?
There's a few of us who got Excel spreadsheet. And Excel, when somebody doesn't come for a clinic, there's a function in the Excel spreadsheet that lights up red and say, this person didn't come. But after that, going to look for that person is like another big problem. Our experience here is, I've done a few small researches in this area, but we did an experiment once where I looked up all the defaulters in my Lancaster clinic, the gynae clinic. There was about 44 defaulters who had defaulted clinic for the last 2 years. So we hired a vehicle and we used our tracking network. Now Fiji has a long history of tracking network, but our tracking network, after 3 months of looking, we only found 4 out of the 44. And this is where we have to understand the opportunities and the difficulties that we have in terms of tracking patients. Fiji has had a history of a successful tracking system. That's how we brought TB down. We brought TB down because we could go to everybody's house and locate them and get them screened. But that was done in a time when nobody moved. Even to get out of the village, you have to ask the permission of the chief. Right now, the Suvarnosari corridor is one of the most mobile areas around the place, and people come in. Some people just come in and they give the address because they just came in just to get their kid into school. And they spend 6 weeks here, but they give the addresses there. And then they go back, never to be found again. And so our tracking system, our network at the moment is a bit irrelevant, not a bit, it's really irrelevant to the current context of Fiji's mobile population. And I guess the other thing that I should say is that we have invested a little bit into putting up computer systems, computer systems, but at the moment we can't, it's one thing to have a program, and then you're getting the right people to punch in the right things into that program. We just don't have the capacity in that area also. So we need to make some collaboration to not only get the program in, but to get the expertise to ensure that the information entered will work. I just also want to add a small point is that in the ministry that we've tried some other things. I mean, I piloted a program the other time on cervical cancer where we tried to use a simpler test. We stained cervixes with special fluid, and when the ones that turned white were the ones that we went for. And in fact, one of the lessons we've learned is that in terms of recruiting people into screening, it seems to me that the only one way that will probably really get some benefit is when you have an outreach sort of approach, where you have a team that just goes from place to place. Because in 6 months, we went from 10% to 33% coverage of our high-risk group, just by going from place to place. We just appointed a team, and we resourced them to go in. And I mean, they did the full thing. They went, they wrote down the name of all those who were screened. They calculated the coverage rate in every small area, so that over the course of 6 months, we were able to get a coverage rate of that particular area. And once we get to the expertise where we can calculate coverage rates, where we can track patients, then we're starting to talk about, yes, it makes sense to bring in all the big guns.
If there's anyone else who wants to raise a comment or make a comment, please put your hands up. Whilst he's speaking, I'm also mindful that the School of Computing Information Mathematical Science, SCIMS, which is here, and also folks from the research office who are here, right in front of us, there's room and scope for projects, projects in these areas in relation to, identifying, coming alongside and coming up with models and that sort of thing. So there's room for applied mathematics there in terms of penetration rates, and also community development, and also just content, having content available for dispersion. Is there anyone else who wants to make a comment?
Dr. Fong, given what you know about the difficulties here in Fiji in addressing cervical cancer, is there anything you can offer for a regional approach? Is it too big? I don't know. I'm just wondering about your thoughts.
Is essentially, my thoughts are mostly what I was trying to touch on throughout the talk, is that a lot more focus has to be done on the basic stuff, like knowing where your patients are, understanding how your patients will react to information. And to me, that's where most of the research is required. It's on getting more understanding of how the people will interact with the service once you bring it in. And basically those lessons need to be learned from previous experiences. We've had as I said, we've had a long history with TB. We brought down TB. We had a long history with leprosy. We brought down leprosy using our network. But what we have not done is that we have not understood the changes that have happened in Fiji's context, and then reapplied or reinvented our tracking system to try and address those new changes. And I think there's a lot of investment that is required in, in just getting to understand how people interact with the health service. Yes,
I'm sorry, just a question on the HPV vaccination process within Fiji. And I just wonder how successful that was in the uptake with at-risk females at that age group.
In actual fact, the HPV immunization overall in Fiji is one of our biggest success stories. The world over, our rates of immunization are even better than Australia and New Zealand. And we even, in our immunization schedule, we've got some stuff that other people don't immunize. We routinely immunize everybody against HBV. There's a hepatitis B vaccine that we are using a lot at the moment. Haemophilus influenza. So we've had a long history with immunization and successful immunization. So the insert of HPV has also achieved the same high levels of coverage. I think when we started it off, we started a little bit on the wrong foot when we started the HPV. I was involved in it, in that we received a big supply of free vaccines, and we wanted to use it fairly quickly. But our awareness program was not optimal. But we quickly learned from that, and we've been able to pull in a lot more, especially because we've got support from AUSAID, who financed the first 5 years of immunization, and now it has been successfully inserted into the government budget to continue the program for HPV immunization.
Thank you, Dr. Fong, for the presentation, and also Joel. My question is on two key areas. One is that I think you presented some very useful data for us today, which is really not available for all the other Pacific countries, knowing that 66% of the cancer sort of mortalities are from cervical and breast cancer. You did say that there has to be more prevention strategies and looking at it from a more holistic perspective. I just wanted to hear more from you in terms of are there other strategies apart from the service that will be provided that will be useful? And I guess this would be more to really look into the social and the cultural issues that really undermine the uptake on screening by women, or also coming and continuing with the care. From your experience, what have been some of these issues that you have seen in Fiji, or maybe in other parts of the Pacific? And how can this be addressed as well through a health response?
I guess, well, like I said, one of the biggest issues that we do need is understanding how locals interact with the health system, and getting a bit more research in that area. With these are areas that have been dealt with quite strongly. If you go to some of the data coming out of New Zealand and Australia and how they fix up their programs, they do a lot of studies first on how the people interact with their service before they start the service. And they look at all the older programs. And I think one of the things that we lack in the Pacific is too many times when we get told that we need a service, we just bring in the service. And then we sit and wait for people to come. Whereas, especially with pap smear screening and most of the other screening, screening is a service where you actively look for the people who are at risk. You don't sit back and wait for them to come. You have to look for them. You go to their houses, you screen them, and then you tick them off. So this actual act of having an ongoing coverage rate, that will only be accurate if you are looking for the people you want to screen. Because calculating the coverage rate requires that you know where they stay, so that you have the right denominator and the right numerator all the time. Then that's the part. I think research is a big thing that needs to be put into the original perspective, but I think it's more important that people understand some of the essential natures of screening and not make it exist like many of the services that we have, where you sit in the health center and just wait for people to come. And I think the outreach, this is why I said the outreach component, I think, is a very big part of any success story with cancer services in Fiji. We do need a strong outreach component that is geared or engineered in a culturally appropriate manner.
Why do you think men and women go to doctors like really late? What makes them, you know, what do you think are the reasons why there's a very, you know, not many people go for screening? Do you think it's a cultural thing? Or do you think people are shy, or how do you think we can actually address some of these issues? So how can we bring down the gap from underreached group? How can we lower that? Dr. James has alluded to one, having a targeted outreach team that goes out on a large-scale deployment. Any other ideas? So what we'll be doing with these outcomes is we'll be sending it back to the Fiji Cancer Society, to the Pacific Islands Forum Secretariat, and also to Dr. James Fong. As you mentioned, as you heard, he mentioned they have the focus groups, focal groups that are currently discussing some. Dr. James, would you care to elaborate? Would you care to elaborate on those focal groups again?
As I said, we have been trying to put together a comprehensive comprehensive cancer program. A comprehensive cancer program started because we were wanting to start the radiotherapy unit. Then IAEA came in and they told us that if you're going to start it, you have to get the building blocks first. So now we've decided, okay, we will not concentrate on radiotherapy unit, we will look at a comprehensive cancer treatment program. And in order to build up this cancer treatment program, we need to do a lot of focus group discussions. We've got a number of, it will be going on until sometime towards the end of January, but we've already started. And some of the feedback we're getting is quite revealing because it's giving us some idea that basically we're writing it as a research project too, but the idea is to look at the perspective of the care provider and the perspective of those who receive care and see how much of a gap have we got between those two. And that's an example of the kind of research that I was doing.
Thank you, Dr. James. Anyone wants to ask Mr. Nilon anything? Mr. Nilon pointed out that the Secretary General is very keen to, he's already started the negotiations that probably succeeded with Korea, Cuba, and China, and are targeting philanthropic organizations through Madam Secretary General's contacts to channel funding in that area, given that the regional foreign leaders have already recognized this as a priority area. So there's a lot of potential there and a lot of room for work off the ground. So again, before we head out to morning tea, Fiji Fashion Week is here, and they were going to be judging the best pink costume. And so I'm just gonna ask Jackie, just before we give this time to Jackie. I'm not sure if you're ready now, Jackie, or you want to do it at tea. But we'll just summarize the discussions, and it's up there on the board. So Now, there's a whole lot of things that Dr. James mentioned and that Mr. Nilon mentioned. The content for today was video streamed. So even after this event finishes, the content will be available on the website. We'll make it available to all our partners. And so what we propose to do is, for those who've been tweeting, thank you very much. For those who haven't yet tweeted, you can still tweet. But what we propose to do is to consolidate this and send it to both our national partners and our regional partners. And as you can see, the tragedy is that of the most prevalent cancers in Fiji, the most prevalent cancers in Fiji are the ones where the preventative means. That's really, really sad. That just means, that to me indicates, I can make a bunch of assumptions, the major one being that people really don't know that you can actually prevent it. And so that we can learn from previous experiences, for instance, how Fiji brought the TB rates down. And there's room to use ICT as a mechanism for tracking and monitoring, outreach, challenges with data entry, building local capacity. And Mr. John Nealon very kindly put up his PowerPoint, so we're able to share that with everybody once it's uploaded on the website. Where he took two paragraphs, or was it one? Actually, 2 pointers from the leaders' communique about how this is now a regional mandate, and that there's room for synergistic approach to targeting underreached, underserved communities. And one of the things that strongly came out of this morning session was that there's a need for strong outreach that's engineered in cultural context and awareness. Apologies that sentence wasn't finished. But with that, we would really like to thank all our partners, in particular the Colonial War Memorial Hospital, Dr. James Fong. Please, everyone, just put your hands together. The Pacific Islands Forum Secretariat, Mr. Joel Nilon. And Seema and Jody are here in the audience as well. Our partners, Fiji Cancer Society, Fiji Fashion Week, the Pacific ICT for Women Digital Alliance, and lastly but not the least, the social clubs from within the university, from without whom this wouldn't have been possible. And I'd like to primarily acknowledge the SCIM Social Club, Research and International Social Club, Campus Life Social Club, the ITS Social Club. And if I've forgotten any social club, I'd just say the whole of the University of the South Pacific, thank you very much. And so with that, just before we invite you to morning tea, I'm going to ask Jackie from Fiji Fashion Week to very quickly say a few words and maybe announce the winner. There's only one winner, because we only got one prize. And then maybe you can talk about your event.
It almost seems a little shallow to talk about fashion when it's such an important issue. However, I think that fashion can draw a lot of attention to, particularly with women's issues with breast cancer and cervical cancer. So thank you for inviting us. Thank you for inviting us. Everybody in this room has probably been touched at some stage by cancer within their family or personally. And thank you for sharing your story. Look, just very quickly, the lady that we picked seems to have disappeared. She's got the most, she was sitting here, she's got the most fabulous pink shoes on. Swastika, okay, where is she? Is she outside? Yes, it is. Swastika, we love your pink dress, but we particularly love your pink shoes. I'm not sure if there's a prize, but congratulations. Very fabulous.
Thank you, Jackie. Thank you, Swastika. We'll give you a prize later on. Swastika is from the SCIM Social Club. And so with that, we'd like to thank you all very much for coming. Please join us for morning tea outside. And you'll see that we still have pink ribbons there. So if you're interested in buying some more pink ribbons or not, or if you feel like dropping a coin or two or some notes, you're welcome to as well. And and then we're going to hand all of that over to the Fiji Cancer Society. I'm going to ask Swastika to hand it over during morning tea. So with that, Dr. James, Mr. Nilon, Swastika will escort you to morning tea. So thank you all for coming. So just so you know, this will be circulated back to everybody. Thanks.